In a small, predominantly white town nestled between rolling hills and vast farmlands lived Alicia Williams, a proud black woman who had worked tirelessly for everything she owned. Alicia's life was filled with ups and downs, but one constant had always been her resilience. After years of saving, she had finally purchased her dream car, a sleek black SUV that she often joked was her chariot. One crisp autumn morning, Alicia parked her car in front of her office, where she worked as an administrative assistant. She had just started her day when she noticed two police officers outside, talking to a group of people gathered near her vehicle. Curiosity piqued, she stepped outside to see what was going on. As she approached, one of the officers gestured towards her. "Is this your car, ma'am?" he asked with a tone that felt more like an accusation than a question. "Yes, officer, it is," Alicia replied calmly, though she couldn't help but notice the suspicious glances from the crowd around them. One of the bystanders, a middle-aged white man in a suit, sneered. "That car's way too nice for someone like you. I bet you stole it." Alicia's heart sank, but she forced herself to stay composed. "Excuse me?" she said, her voice steady but edged with anger. "I worked hard for this car. I didn't steal anything." The officer who had spoken earlier glanced at the man, then back at Alicia. "We received a report that this vehicle might be stolen. We're going to need to see some proof of ownership." Alicia was stunned. It wasn't just the accusation. It was the way they assumed she was guilty simply because of how she looked. "This is absurd," she said. "I have all the paperwork in my car. Give me a moment." As she reached into her bag for her car keys, the second officer stepped forward. "Ma'am, we're going to need to search the vehicle before you retrieve anything." Alicia was taken aback. "Search it? You haven't even let me show you my documents." The man in the suit smirked. "Just admit it, lady. You don't belong here, and neither does that car." A knot formed in Alicia's stomach, and she could feel the eyes of the crowd digging into her. She was being judged, not based on her character, but on the color of her skin. The familiar weight of discrimination pressed down on her, but this time, she wasn't going to let it break her. "Officer," she said, her voice trembling with controlled anger, "I know my rights. I am not giving you permission to search my car without a warrant. And you," she turned to the man in the suit, "you don't know anything about me." But before the situation could escalate further, Alicia saw a familiar figure walking towards her from across the street. It was Rebecca Jones, her lawyer and longtime friend. Rebecca was a fiery, no-nonsense attorney known for her fierce dedication to justice, especially when it came to cases involving racial discrimination. "What's going on here?" Rebecca demanded, her sharp voice cutting through the tension. The officers exchanged glances, clearly caught off guard by the sudden appearance of a lawyer. "They're accusing me of stealing my own car," Alicia explained, trying to keep her voice steady. "They haven't even let me show them the documents." Rebecca's eyes narrowed and she turned to the officers. "On what grounds are you accusing her? Has there been a legitimate report, or are you just acting on the word of some biased onlooker?" The man in the suit scoffed. "That car is too expensive for her. It's common sense." Rebecca's eyes flashed with anger, but she remained composed. Common sense or racism? The crowd had grown silent, watching the exchange with a mixture of curiosity and discomfort. The officers shifted uneasily, sensing that this situation was quickly spiraling beyond their control. "Listen," one of the officers said, trying to sound reasonable. "We're just following protocol. We got a call about a possible stolen vehicle." "From who?" Rebecca interrupted. "This man? The one who's openly admitting his prejudice? You have no legal right to detain my client or search her property based on the baseless accusation of a bystander." The officer faltered. "Well, we just need to confirm." "You don't need to confirm anything without probable cause," Rebecca shot back. "And right now, the only thing you're confirming is your own bias." Alicia stood silently beside her lawyer, grateful for her presence but still seething with anger. She had done nothing wrong, yet here she was, having to defend herself because of the color of her skin. Rebecca reached into her briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents. "Here's the proof of ownership for this vehicle. Alicia Williams has every legal right to drive this car. If you continue to harass her, we will be filing a formal complaint for racial discrimination and unlawful detainment." The officers glanced at each other, clearly realizing they were in over their heads. The situation had shifted, and they knew they had no legal grounds to proceed. We're just trying to do our jobs," one of them muttered. "And your job," Rebecca said coldly, "is to protect and serve, not to harass and intimidate based on racial bias. Now, if you have no further business here, I suggest you let my client go about her day." The officers hesitated for a moment, then reluctantly stepped away from Alicia's car. The man in the suit, however, wasn't finished. "This isn't over," he snarled. "People like her don't belong here." Rebecca turned to him, her expression fierce. "People like her? You mean hardworking, law-abiding citizens who've earned everything they have? People like her are exactly who belong here. It's people like you who need to learn some humility." The man's face twisted in anger, but before he could respond, Rebecca raised her hand. "You can say whatever you want, but I'll make sure the world knows exactly what kind of person you are. And if you ever come near my client again, you'll be dealing with more than just me. You'll be facing a lawsuit." The man glared at her, but the crowd had already begun to shift, murmuring amongst themselves. They could see the truth now. This wasn't about a stolen car. It was about prejudice, plain and simple. With a final huff, the man turned and stormed off, disappearing into the crowd. The officers, clearly defeated, muttered an apology to Alicia before heading back to their patrol car. As the crowd slowly dispersed, Rebecca turned to Alicia, her fierce expression softening into one of concern. "Are you okay?" Alicia let out a long breath, her hands still trembling from the encounter. "I will be, thanks to you." Rebecca smiled. "You don't have to thank me. What they did was wrong, and I wasn't going to let them get away with it." Alicia nodded, but the weight of the experience still hung over her. "I'm so tired of this," she said quietly. "Tired of always having to fight, just to be treated like a human being." Rebecca placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I know, but we'll keep fighting until things change, and they will change." Alicia smiled faintly, but the sadness lingered in her eyes. As they stood together in the now empty parking lot, she couldn't help but wonder how many more times she'd have to face this kind of battle. But for now, she was grateful to have a friend like Rebecca by her side, someone who would stand up for her, no matter the cost. And as the two women drove away in Alicia's car, the lesson was clear. No matter how hard the world tried to tear you down, sometimes all it takes is one person's courage to remind you of your worth. As Alicia and Rebecca drove away, the weight of the day's events still hung in the air. Alicia couldn't shake the anger and frustration from the encounter. Though she had won this battle, the scars of prejudice ran deep, reminding her of the countless times she'd been judged by her skin, not her character. Rebecca, sensing her friend's unease, spoke softly. "You did great today. You stood up for yourself, and that's not easy." Alicia nodded, staring out the window. "It just feels so exhausting, you know? Every time I think we've made progress, something like this happens." Rebecca sighed. "I know, but change doesn't happen overnight. It's these moments, though, when we push back, when we refuse to let them define us, that we start to shift things." Alicia took a deep breath and nodded again. She knew Rebecca was right, but it was hard to see the light when the darkness seemed so persistent. Still, today had taught her an important lesson. She wasn't alone. With people like Rebecca at her side, she had the strength to keep fighting. As they approached Alicia's neighborhood, a sense of calm slowly settled in. This wasn't the first time she'd faced racism, and it wouldn't be the last. But each time she grew stronger, more resilient, and for that, she was proud. They parked in front of Alicia's house, and before Rebecca left, she squeezed Alicia's hand. "You're not just fighting for yourself, Alicia. You're fighting for everyone who's been through this, and we're all behind you." Alicia smiled. "Thank you, Rebecca. I needed that." With that, they said their goodbyes. As Alicia watched her friend drive off, she felt a new sense of determination. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more about real-life challenges and triumphs, Make sure to subscribe to our channel for powerful, inspiring content. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update.